You're listening to The Authenticity Show, where you get to eavesdrop on great conversations about health, creativity, and the quest for excellence. Your hosts are Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you to please subscribe to The Authenticity Show wherever you get your podcasts, and find us on social media. We would love to hear from you. Our guest today is Jess Marion, who has been on the show before and who we think is fantastic. Today, Jess and Carlos are going to be talking about a new endeavor of theirs called Sacred Medicine Journeys, which is a wonderful service and opportunity for the world at large. So let's get into it. Sacred Medicine Journeys.
All right, Carlos.
Satya.
We're here for another authenticity episode, and they're all unique in their own special way. This one's pretty special because not only do we have Jess Marion back with us, who we've interviewed before, but I'm sort of interviewing both of you tonight because the two of you have started an amazing new project, a service for people, Sacred Medicine Journeys. Why don't you take a moment and just kind of explain what you're doing, and then we can start getting into questions.
Yeah. Well, Jess and I are extremely excited about it because it's a source for us as on a personal level for growth and journey, and just the ability to share the experience with other people. And so we have a way of actually getting in touch with us. So it's just sacredmedicinejourneys.com. Simple. It's journeys plural, so there's an S in there.
Journeys with an S.
But you'll see it immediately. She's done a lovely job on creating and building the site, and we're pretty happy with it so far. So yeah, Jess.
Well, thank you so much, guys. I'm so happy to be here and sharing this project with Carlos. Medicine work is a really transformational and profound experience, and it's something that we want to share with as many people as is appropriate because it has the potential to change people's lives for the better and, maybe change the world a little bit.
All right. So let's kind of get into what exactly this service is that you're doing for people. Before we dive into some juicy questions about it, what is Sacred Medicine Journeys? What are you offering?
Well, first of all, let's just say it's under the category of healing for sure.
Okay.
Right. This is essentially a healing retreat. So it would involve, Jess and my many years of coaching work. Obviously, many people know that we do NLP and hypnosis and other healing modalities, and all of that's bringing to bear on this topic of the retreat, which will involve the use of sacred substances. Some people would call it psychedelics or entheogens. Many words for it, but these are medicines that can, if used properly, really open up new perspectives, insights, help people to solve problems, and help them to get in touch with what a clear path of healing, even through difficult, dark experiences in their life, can be like. So it's sort of opens a door to let the light in, and because we're doing it in a facilitated way, it's not just random people ingesting substances and getting high. This is done in a particular way that makes us pretty different. Wouldn't you say, Jess?
I absolutely agree, because it isn't just about ingesting a substance. There's a lot that goes into this in terms of preparation and integration and utilizing multiple modalities, things like body work, yoga, Tai Chi, to create a holistic healing experience that our hope is going to be that it sets people up for a completely changed life after the retreat, so that they are in a new place to continue growth and self-work, and they'll gain skills that they'll be able to take into the rest of their lives.
Wow. There is not enough of this out there. There's not enough, and I cannot think of two more amazing humans to do this for people.
Thank you.
I am thrilled that you guys are doing this. I know I've heard conversations, and I've known that this is kind of something that's been kicked around a little bit, and the fact that this is actually happening is super, super exciting. And so, first big question: why are you doing this now?
Wow. Well, if you've been paying attention to the news lately over the last couple of years, you'll notice that there's a lot of articles that keep showing up about research into psychedelics opening back up again after like a almost 50-year ban on the research. And there are also a number of books and documentaries, Netflix and on Vice. There are a lot of people touting the benefits of what psychedelic facilitated experience can do for you. So why now? It's more like, why now publicly? Why now a little bit in the light rather than, in I don't want to say back alleys, but that sounds dramatic, but under the radar maybe is a better way of putting it. Lots of people, shamans, healers, some psychotherapists, and people like myself, have done these kinds of things below the radar because we believe in it. We always have believed in it, but it's starting to become socially acceptable to talk about this. People are, I think, haven't you seen, Jess, that clients ask you about it? They're like,
Yes.
hey, I did this psychedelic journey, or I've tried this, or what do you think about taking psychedelics for healing? And so it's starting to become less taboo as it becomes, more and more pervasive in culture that psychedelic talk, and it's being referred to in movies and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's really why now. And we're at a point where we both have been doing the coaching stuff for a long time, and we are really committed to that path of healing and helping as a facilitator. And so there's this tool that quite a lot of people don't know how powerful it really is, like as a force for good. And we're getting in kind of in the early stages of when this may become totally legal. We don't know what will happen in the next few years, but there are bills being tossed around on a federal level and also on a local city and state level. So the tides are shifting, and we felt like if we're going to do it, we might as well get in now on the above ground kind of situation and start offering this because it's dear to our hearts and it means a lot to us, and we've seen the power of what this can do. We know that our hypnosis and NLP and all the other things we do is powerful too.
Yeah.
But there's really no substitute for this kind of work. I mean, you can get benefits doing lots of things, but I've never seen anything as powerful as combining the mindset tools with psychoactive substances like this.
Yeah, yeah. And there was a time when things like yoga were wacky ideas that were suddenly introduced to the United States and places outside of the countries of origin, those things. Meditation, like today, here we are right now, it's 2022. Things like yoga and meditation and anything in that genre is just commonplace now. And it's not only commonplace, it's been researched a ton.
Yeah.
You can't read a book or an article from some doctor, psychiatrist, psychologist that's not talking about the benefits of doing these things. So it sounds like this is kind of the next powerful revealing of something, that has, like you said, has been kind of in the shadows.
Yeah.
And doesn't really need to be. And this is thrilling that you guys are going to be doing this. Now, these are retreats.
Yes.
What makes these retreats a little different from what maybe others are doing and what people might be thinking?
Well, there are a few elements that make this really unique. The first being Carlos and myself, our experience as coaches. We've both been coaching for a very long time, so we bring a therapeutic element that one might not necessarily get from other retreats where they have a number of facilitators but haven't been working one-on-one with clients for several years. The retreats themselves will be doing multiple journeys. And in between the journeys, we'll be doing different integration exercises, different cultural and local experiences. We want to create this well-rounded, transformative experience so that the medicine after the journeys or in between the journeys, that work continues to weave throughout the client's experience. Because if they're in one of the integration days, for example, and they're still thinking and processing, and the medicine, although the substance has left their system, while they're with us, they're still going to be experiencing, at some level, the medicine. And if they have that experience with us, then beyond the time of the retreat, that will continue to benefit them.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I can continue on that that vein, the medicine experience, as we define it, is not just the substance. That's really, really important from the beginning to know that. So when we talk about the medicine experience, it's almost like we're talking about the egregore of all the things that led up to and are continuing beyond the ingestion of the substance. So you're tapping into, thousands of years of that egregore. There's tradition behind it. Mm-hmm. There's, you could say, perhaps a psycho-spiritual quality to when you enter into it with that kind of respect and mindfulness, that there is a little something extra that goes beyond what you could easily put into words. And that is something that carries with you. I find that personally from doing the work for a long time, that I feel in touch with the medicine even when I'm not doing the medicine. So that's why when we say the medicine experience, we're talking about everything before and after and during the ingestion. Mm-hmm. So we're different because we're not coming from, say, like an indigenous tribe where we specifically have been following an indigenous system of some kind, but we're also not the clinical medical setting that you might see at Johns Hopkins or something like that. It's something else entirely, what we're doing. And I don't see a lot of that. I don't see a lot of this kind of thing happening. I see people here and there have retreats where they might go into psychedelic tourism, maybe, or they have 20 or 30 people in a maloka somewhere, and it's they maybe have someone with a didgeridoo and somebody who gives out, and it's just mass amounts of people taking ayahuasca or something like that. And I don't want to knock that. That's not really my intent, but there is a contrast there between those group situations like that and a smaller kind of a group, like where we're keeping it down to, say, 5 or 10 people at a time, where you can really focus on individual needs. You can really watch what's going on and help facilitate that happening and be able to track that over several days. If our retreats are anywhere between, say, 6 to 8 days or something like that, we have a chance to do the medicine 2 or 3 times with those integration days in between. And, to kind of extend that description, her and I will be doing extensive interviewing before, as well as there will be work that needs to be done prior to the experience so that the frame of mind of the people who are participating are set up for success. What we want is essentially for people to have an experience where they say, wow, I am so grateful that I made this choice. This has changed things for me. I see things differently. My life is different. I will never forget this. Like, we want to impart that feeling so that by the end they just feel like it was the best choice they could have made.
It sounds like you're taking a very professional approach to it. There's assessment You know, there's a plan going
Yep.
into it. You know, there's a plan for afterwards.
Tracking afterward. That's exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Follow up.
It sounds like, you know, most people that have had psychedelic experiences, and this is what you see in the literature, right, is they usually describe it as a peak experience. It's one of the most significant experiences in their life. So it sounds like you're preparing people for a peak experience that is made up of several peak experiences.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, sounds great. I love it. So okay, let's shift here a little bit. Because of the legal history and some of the social history around these kinds of sacred medicines, there are maybe myths, misconceptions.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get into some of those.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what would be some myths that you think maybe kind of let's just get it out of the way. They need to be dispelled.
Sure.
Yeah. The myth that I've encountered is if you take a psychedelic one time, you're going to go crazy. You're going to lose your mind, and it's permanent. This is not true at all, and the science shows that this is not true. While there might be a small group of individuals for whom sacred medicine is contraindicated, for most of us, 99% of us, that's not an official number, guys, it's fine. So that would be number one. You're not going to go crazy and you're not going to die. Psychedelics, sacred medicines, are some of the safest substances known to mankind. There is no LD50, a lethal dose for 50% of the population. There is no known one for psilocybin mushrooms. And the one that's given for LSD, there's actually no proof for because they were basing it off of dosing an elephant.
Yeah.
It was like LD 100 and even that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And you know, for substances that can create, let's face it, very powerful experiences, that's almost unheard of to have something that is that powerful yet is actually unbelievably safe, especially in the right location with the right people and the right circumstances.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of trailing off of that, there have been a lot of myths centered on the idea that, let's say, for example, take LSD and it's going to destroy your chromosomes. That was disproven a long time ago, but it still persists as a myth, even taught in medical schools and nursing schools, because they just didn't correct that. There are plenty of nurses I've heard that from, doctors I've heard that from. It's not true. Now, it was based on research that was done in a very unscientific way. If I remember correctly, they more or less poured liquid LSD on some chromosomes and say, hey, look, see, it damaged the chromosomes. But you could have done the same thing with caffeine or any other substance.
Distilled water.
Or sugar solution.
Yeah.
It wasn't really the way, that's not how you test that. Another one was in with MDMA, so methyl dioxymethamphetamine.
Methylene deoxymethamphetamine.
Yeah, it's methyl dioxymethamphetamine, something like that. Anyway, yes, right. And they showed people with holes in their brain.
Yeah,
Said, oh my God,
I
this is
remember
gonna create
that.
holes in the brain. And they
early
even showed
90s and
images
stuff,
that were like computer-generated images of brains with areas of the brain that had holes in them.
I remember seeing that on the news.
Me too, and I saw posters. I saw anti-drug posters because we grew up in the same time era where, or the era where the Say No to Drugs campaign, which still kind of continues to this day. But what they found out was that was a lie. The doctor who was doing that had switched the MDMA with just straight up methamphetamine, and they figured that out later because they couldn't duplicate it. And they didn't make a big deal of mentioning that. Oh, we screwed up. We made a mistake. That's not true. They just kept the myth going. So that's one thing, is that people sometimes think, well, if I do this, I'll have irreparable damage to my brain. which is kind of trailing off the idea I'm going to go insane if I do a psychedelic. Because they hear of the description, oh, it causes psychosis. And you're starting to get into really gray areas about what that means when you talk about psychosis. I mean, are you in psychosis when you're having a dream of doing something? Maybe, by that definition. But does that mean you are a psychotic? No, it means your brain has a wide range of things it can do. It doesn't mean it's doing that all the time. It means that, when you take a psychedelic, you are in an abnormal state of mind for a while. Like during the duration of the experience, your brain is doing things that it normally doesn't do. It's doing some things that it does normally do as well. But it eventually rebalances, and what happens on the other end of that's really significant. On the other end of that, there's improvement in cognition. There's improvement in memory. There's improvement in disorders like migraines.
Yeah, that's right.
Migraine reduction. There's improvements in things like psoriasis, where I've seen some of the original photographs when they were doing research 50 years ago of a woman's legs who were covered in psoriasis, and she took LSD, and it was like at a therapeutic dose. And the next pictures were her with practically no psoriasis on her legs whatsoever. There's all sorts of medical benefits here. And the state that you go into might feel a little crazy. Let's admit the truth. When you're on a psychedelic, you're perceiving in an abnormal way. But if you put a context and a container and a frame around it, you can see yourself and laugh about it and go, wow, I'm really perceiving things in a different way for a few hours. And there's no harm in that. On the contrary, it makes you feel more flexible, more capable of accepting the weirdness of life and the weirdness of your own mind. And I feel that the end result is you're more stable. You're more able to accept yourself and the way things are. You go into a deeper sense of acceptance. It takes acceptance to go through a psychedelic experience, because not all of it is comfortable.
Yeah, sure. Well, hey, meditation retreats aren't comfortable.
Oh, they're awful.
But
the results are great.
Right, fantastic. So, so there you go. Okay, beautiful. Do you take the same medicines along with the participants?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about that.
That's different, isn't it, Jess?
Yes.
The idea about that, and why is that? And I think people would be curious.
This is actually an approach that is different from a lot of the established retreats. And one of the reasons that we do it is that it's important for us to be at a similar level as those in the retreat, because then our senses are going to be more open and more primed to pick up on what people are experiencing and who might need some assistance and who is having a really great time, and we can just let them be. So we want to be on the same wavelength. We're both hypnotists. We would not do hypnosis without going into trance ourselves, and this is the same.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's good that we're talking about this, because I think someone who doesn't know or has a certain opinion, they may come into it with the idea that that's somehow not good. So let's just put that on the table.
Right.
There are people who think that's not a good idea. Like, oh my goodness, you're being irresponsible. How could you take these drugs, quote unquote? How would you be able to track what's going on and make sure that everyone's safe? And isn't that a liability and all this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And if you don't understand what the psychedelic experience really is, and you have just a few judgments about it, that could seem correct. It could seem 100% like a very arguable, defensible place to be coming from. But having done this for more than 3 decades now and a lot of experience with it, I can tell you that it's very important to do it. It's very important to enter into that state. Like she said, you need to be able to be on the same wavelength and also show that proof in the pudding. Like, this is the work we're doing. I'm here too. I'm not an outsider. So when I speak to you about what heavy thing you might be going through in the moment, you know that I'm speaking the truth because I'm right here with you and I've been through it myself. So there's not that clinical, disinfected sort of separation between the two of you. It's like we're there in in the dirt, digging the plants and right there with you.
I like it. And I'll share something. I'm an occupational therapist, and my shirt says so. Motivate, see the OT. Occupational
nice.
therapy.
Love it.
When occupational therapists do group sessions with clients, if we're working on a project, like for example, maybe the group is working on some kind of collage, right? Mm-hmm. It is customary for the therapist to also make a collage.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the fact that all people are engaging in a similar activity, from a therapy perspective, has value, right? It does affect the quality of the session. So as a therapist, I would say, right on. That's great. It is established that there are certain things that the therapist would be doing along with the clients. So this seems like that. Kind of seems like the approach.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So if you look at indigenous practices, ethnogenic practices, for tens of thousands of years, if not more, the way of practicing with these medicines is for the shaman or the leader to also ingest. No one is in the Maloka or wherever who isn't in the same process. It seems to me that it's only right now with the medicalization or the attempted medicalization of sacred medicine that this idea has entered the discussion of the facilitator being separate. There are instances where people will have journeys and they'll have someone with them who isn't ingesting. They're a trip sitter. That's not what we're doing.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good distinction.
Yeah. So just like you, we have to be in the fray, so to speak, to help facilitate the change.
Yeah, I like that. And by the way, folks, this is coming from a medical anthropologist, right? So this idea of
Yes.
knowing how those practices were from the cultures that they mostly emerged from.
Yes.
It's important. And so there is a long history. It sounds that this is the way it has been done. This is the established practice.
It's traditional.
Yep.
To do this, right? In
Yes.
fact, to medicalize it, which I think there's we could talk about that too. There's probably a space for that as well, but this, let me say it this way. It sounds like there's a lot of wisdom in following the advice and the general direction that those that have done this for generations upon generations have already figured out.
Yes. And, the saying, never trust a skinny chef. Right?
Right.
To taste your own cooking, is very important. I have my own shirt today that says psychedelic research volunteer, which I wear tongue in cheek, but I also mean it at the same time. Because there are things like that. Like the MAPS has its own research grants that allow for people to enter into various studies and things like that. And those settings are different than what we do. We've done some a little bit of MAPS training and things like that. And we are philosophically, we love MAPS and we love what it's done. I donate money to MAPS every year. And you do too?
Yes.
I think a lot of our close friends see the benefit of it. MAPS, for those who don't know, is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, and it's just maps.org. But taking the substances also shows the participants that there are levels of understanding, levels of experience. What you experience when you first take a psychedelic is going to be different than what you experience after having done it for years. And for them to be taking it alongside somebody who has many, many years, not only on a very surface level can be helpful, but I think on an unconscious level, we're constantly reading and feeling and experiencing things at unconscious levels that affect the way we understand each context and every experience. So when you're hanging out with somebody who's taken it a long time, they're behaving differently. It's not just what they say, it's the way they seem to be processing the room. the way they're processing information, and the way they are either aware or unaware of things. That's different than somebody who's just taking it for the first time or doesn't have as much experience. So it's so important that we take it with them.
Yeah, to just build on this, to share a little bit of my personal history, I've worked with Carlos. He's been my guide for some time now. And the very first time that I went on a journey, I was so thankful that Carlos was also taking the medicine, because it gave me someone to model. Because the first time, it is, in many ways, a heroic experience. So to have someone there who is interacting with the medicine in a way that's calm and wise, it gives people who are new to this something to follow, and it gives a sense of comfort. Honestly, if Carlos hadn't taken the medicine and it was just me, it would feel really awkward. Because it's a very vulnerable and open space, and when everybody is in that space, that's really when the magic happens.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you say, Jess, that maybe even though you trust me and all that, but at some level, wouldn't it be easy for your mind to think, well, he doesn't understand because he's not here in this state with me? I mean, it's just an easy thing to think.
Yeah, or
and this
he's judging
eliminates
me.
that. Yeah, this eliminates
Yeah,
that.
yeah. There's always that risk of, how can you give me advice? You don't know what I'm going through.
Exactly.
But yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're right there, So how have these substances affected you in your own lives?
Sure. They've affected me greatly. I first wanted to explore sacred medicine, out of curiosity, because I had read Michael Pollan's wonderful book, How to Change Your Brain. So I was really curious, but then that's kind of like the intellectual reason, the conscious reason. I also wanted personal healing. I wanted to be able to step more into vulnerability in my relationships. That has been a big struggle for me. And you don't get much more vulnerable than doing sacred medicine work. So that really created a very positive shift. And since then, I've done a lot more of this really deep emotional work that I continue to benefit from. I've really developed a deep relationship, particularly with mushrooms. It's a spiritual relationship. I feel them when I'm not journeying. They influence how I think, how I interact with the world. Since I started with sacred medicine, my life is dramatically improved. I now meditate daily. My philosophical and spiritual views of the world have shifted. I used to be really into beer. Like, I was a craft brewer. I was passionate, I still am, about the art and science of brewing. I find it incredibly fascinating. But I stopped drinking. I can't touch it now. And it was a really amazing change for me. I ended up dropping 45 pounds since the start of this year. It was really incredible. And then on my most recent journey, for those who don't know me, I'm legally blind. I have a bunch of different conditions, but two of the conditions I have, strabismus and nystagmus, make it almost impossible for me to control my eye movements, and my eyes are misaligned. But on the most recent journey, Carlos pointed out, your eyes have stopped moving, and they're totally aligned, which I can't do that consciously. So that's really, I'm going to explore that and see if I can make it permanent going forward. Fingers crossed.
By the way, that was really, really cool to see. I was just, I at first I thought it was just a quick fluke, and then I noticed it wasn't stopping. Like she was looking directly in my eyes and maintaining eye focus in the way that you're doing right now, Satch. And it was like, I'm not used to seeing that from her. We've had face-to-face many, many times. So to see this, it was almost like I had to remind myself that this is somebody who is legally blind. But in this moment, her eyes looked completely relaxed, focused, and really centered on my eyes when we were communicating back and forth. It was very, very interesting to see that. And they were totally in line.
That's fascinating, because some of the anecdotal things that you hear when people are on these journeys is that things that we don't normally have conscious control over, we maybe have a little more of a relationship with those things. Was it might have been Paul Stamets,
the stutter.
The mushroom guy. Well, yeah, he has his own story about stuttering and mushrooms.
Yeah.
It might have been him. He was talking about somebody that he knew was an older person that was hard of hearing and did a mushroom journey and was laying on the deck and was hearing these tapping sounds. His hearing aid was out.
Yes.
And then he realized it was the sound of the ants walking on the deck.
Wow.
Yep.
So it's got to make you think a little deeper about these things that we sort of just assume we don't have any kind of control over.
Especially on that story, what I found interesting, because one could argue that, okay, well, he was having a fanciful, experience.
Yeah.
And that's cool, but what does that actually mean? But the thing is, I believe he stopped wearing his hearing aids after that. So this change was not just a momentary, hallucination or something like that. It's something that permanently shifted his hearing. And he went to the doctors and they confirmed to him that, no, there's been a definite shift in your ability to hear. It was greatly improved and it has stayed that way. So that's what I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, and and this is a conversation that you and I have had a little bit, not in front of microphones, There is a belief out there that if you were to use psychedelics and gain some kind of improvements in your life, whether you call that just psychological or spiritual, whatever it is, that it's cheating.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of an idea that, you're cheating. They got it from drugs.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Or it's dismissed as less significant in some way.
Yes, somehow you didn't earn it.
Yeah.
Maybe you could say something about that. Do you have anything to share about that? It's just kind of my own question that I was curious about.
For sure.
Is it cheating?
I would like to think of it as not cheating, because that doesn't really feel like it resonates for the experience.
Yeah.
It's more like making use of a technology that many people just don't use.
Yeah. Okay.
So you could, go ahead and not use an atlatl to throw your spear, or you could learn that an atlatl causes your spear to go farther and straighter.
Yeah.
When you throw it,
right?
It's technology.
Because that bow and arrow, what a shortcut.
Right.
If you didn't kill the animal with your bare hands, then you're cheating.
Exactly. So psychedelics have been around longer than us. And there's strong evidence to more than suggest, but that proves that on every continent, psychedelics have been actively used since before written history. We see it in the archaeological evidence, and and it wasn't just Homo sapiens. Other predecessors used it as well, and we see the animal kingdom. Almost all of the mammals, if you look at the zoological studies, that they say that almost all mammals utilize mind-altering substances and psychedelics. I mean, everything from monkeys and dogs to bears to reindeer to apes and
the dolphins with the puffer fish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it seems to be a common thing among mammals, but there's a reason for that, I think. I think it's ubiquitous in nature that there are these substances everywhere that in so many different forms. I mean, just mushrooms alone, there's over 200 psychedelic varieties of psilocybin-containing mushrooms.
Wow. Okay.
That's not including other deliriants like the Amanita muscaria varieties and other things like that. And that's just psilocybin mushrooms.
Yeah.
200 varieties.
Wow.
And so that's just one little small sliver, and there are many psychoactive plants that would be considered psychedelic or psychotropic. And so it's everywhere and it's not going away. If you think it's cheating, I would just say look into it a little deeper, because this is utilizing something that has incredible benefit. So you can choose not to if you want to.
Right. So maybe a spin-off question to that. I think there's probably a lot of people that would want to know, or maybe have a misconception, that what you get during the experience is only during the experience.
Like it's transitory.
Yeah, like you see it when you're in that state and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Yet, it does appear that you actually do bring things back with you into your regular world that are permanent, or that are lasting, at least.
Indeed.
Yeah, if I can cycle a little bit back to the last question, and maybe I'll answer a bit of this in what I have to say. There is a quote about, I can't remember who said it, but beware beware of unearned wisdom.
Sure, yeah. Okay.
And that type of mentality seems to come from some individuals who are very invested in their particular path, which is wonderful. However, for those of us who are on this path, it is a path. It is a spiritual path. Not everybody is going to walk that path. Not everybody who comes on a retreat with us is necessarily interested in building this lifelong relationship with the substance, and that's fine. However, or in addition to, if somebody were to take antidepressants, nobody says to that person that that's cheating. You should just find a way to feel better.
Right. Yeah. Or antibiotics.
Yeah. So
This
is the same. And as Carlos was saying, these substances have been used by humans and other creatures since before written history. This is an established path. So it can't really be cheating if you're walking a path that requires consistent effort and consistent work, which this does. It isn't just taking the substance, it's all of the preparation that goes into it. Like Carlos can tell you, like at least 2 weeks before I do a journey, I'm like going through all sorts of emotional stuff. And then after the journey, the integration process can last anywhere from weeks to months or even a lifetime. So it isn't cheating, and it isn't just the experiences or the healing is only within the context of the substance. For some individuals who might be treating these substances recreationally, that might be the case. They might have all these brilliant insights when they've ingested the substance, but they don't apply it to their life after, in which case that those types of statements would be accurate. But for us and for the people who work with us, we're inviting everyone to continue that process of growth and discovery well beyond the retreat.
Yeah. Well said. Sounds like this can be hard work.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard work. It has fun moments that help make that hard work. It helps you to feel more encouraged, especially though when you see the results. But along the way, there will be high moments. Why people talk about getting high, right? Talking about their mood being lifted, right? Happiness, joy, laughter, epiphany, all sorts of stuff that can be really exciting. Seeing things in new ways, hearing things in new ways, feeling things in new ways. All of that can be really exciting. And there are people who mostly have that kind of experience and it's not heavy for them. And then there are people who, like myself, who had both, a lot of the heavy things that needed to be worked through and also some really high moments. And I don't look at, like my litmus test for whether something's good for me is not whether or not it's comfortable. My litmus test is more based on, does this help me get the results that I want in my life? Just, is it helpful? Is it very helpful to me? Is it something that I can use? So the work that she was talking about a moment ago, how could it be cheating if you have to really apply yourself before, during, and after the experience? You're working your ass off, whether it's journaling or making lifestyle changes as a result of the epiphanies you make, or learning to address long suppressed feelings. So anyone who says that you're cheating or it's just a transitory state is not understanding what it's really like. They're probably someone who either dipped their toe in it and didn't really continue, or they're someone who's never tried it because they were afraid and they're looking for ways to justify why no one else should either.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, that's
Okay.
been my experience with talking to people about it. I've talked to religious folks that were against it. I've talked to medical folks that were against it. And it's the same type of argument. The way they structure their argument, it's the same. And it always comes down to, well, have you tried it? And what did you do while you did it? Who were
Yeah,
you with?
yeah.
And they don't want to go there. Either they did and they don't want to talk about it, or they haven't tried it at all and don't like that question because it exposes the ignorance embedded in the question itself. It's not an easy path, and it's definitely not cheating.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
utilizing
great.
a powerful tool is what
Yeah.
it is.
So let's get into bad trips. This is something you hear about,
Yeah.
right? Every kid growing up, going to school here in the U.S., you
Yeah.
know, as you and I did, Carlos, kids in California going to school. There's a lot of fear that surrounds these kinds of things. So let's talk about bad trips. How do you avoid them? What do you do about them? Are there bad trips?
Yeah.
What do you have to say?
You want to start on that?
Sure. So I'll start with the easy question.
Okay.
Are there bad trips? Yes and no. There are bad trips when people engage with these substances irresponsibly. And it doesn't mean the trip is necessarily bad, but because they don't have the respect for the substance or the emotional maturity, they can land in very dark places and not know how to process it. So in that instance, yes, there are bad trips. The other side of the coin is if someone is engaging with the medicine in a respectful, responsible way, one can have a trip that is challenging, that is incredibly difficult. I recently had one that was incredibly difficult. However, because of the way in which we're engaging with the medicine, that turned into something incredibly beautiful and powerfully transformative for me. So in those cases, if you know how to work with what's happening and you have the container around the experience that says, hey, this is okay, then there are no bad trips.
Okay.
If you frame a therapeutic experience and you filter it based on whether or not you felt good the whole time, then of course you could say that any bad experience you had was a bad experience. But if you're looking at your therapeutic experience, even non-drug related,
Sure.
as whether or not you gained something from it or learned something from it, or if it caused you to make the choice to pivot your lifestyle in a particular way and it was uncomfortable that it made you do that, would you still describe it as a bad experience?
Right.
I don't think-
you've got me thinking about trips to the dentist.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Or
you
to
go-
the therapist.
Yeah, to the therapist. Yeah, sometimes you go and you see a professional for something, and you say, "Oh, that was an easy one. It was just a checkup. Oh, I just got my teeth cleaned. I just had to drop off some paper." And then sometimes you go and you get surgery. You get something big done, and I see the parallel there.
Right.
Right. That is your open heart surgery a bad trip to the hospital? Well, beats the alternative.
Is confronting someone that you feel scared to confront, is that a bad experience because it's uncomfortable and scares the hell out of you? Or is it a good experience because you're learning how to be brave, how to have courage, how to love yourself enough to stand up for what is important to you, that you're building faith and trust in your capacity to resolve conflicts with someone? So the idea that it's, that you could have a bad trip, I think the framing that people enter into with that mindset is one of disempowerment. Like, what is empowerment if not having an internal locus of control, at least for your choices and for the way you engage, right? Your agency. That's what empowerment is all about, right? You can't control everything outside, but you can control ultimately where you're coming from. So that beingness, if you will, the part of you that is having the thoughts. You can have some control over that. And when you take a psychedelic, they say it's either like a telescope that allows you to see very far, or a microscope that allows you to see inwardly to a very fine, minute level. When you do that, if you're a person who's gone through uncomfortable experiences, it could be that memories can float up. It could be that something you've been suppressing for a while starts to show itself. And it's not that you have to, and it's not that it always will. It's not like that. But when you strip away your inhibitions, your natural state is to kind of think about some of those negative feelings, then naturally they're going to manifest. Psychedelic means mind manifesting. So what is underneath the surface of what your mind is, when you relax, when you let go, when you open up, whatever's below the surface has the possibility of floating up. But if you're committed to the medicine experience being sacred, then you would even think that the uncomfortable experiences are the gifts that you just need to unwrap to the level where you see what's beneficial about it. You got to keep going and not give up. So I don't like the idea of bad trips. I don't agree with that. I think there are trips, and what makes it good or bad is personal, and it doesn't have to, you're not stuck. So if you have an experience that is uncomfortable, first of all, facilitators can help. That's one of the reasons why we're doing it. Not everyone has the unconscious skill developed to be able to adjust and adapt and navigate. But you can develop that skill pretty rapidly. And the best way to do that is just to dive in with both feet. So how to avoid a quote-unquote bad trip? There are some really surface level things that you can do that help to minimize that. One of them is, don't just take psychedelics. Do the research first. Figure out, why am I doing this? What is this that interests me? What do I want to get out of it? Do a little research. Read up on it. Talk to people who are knowledgeable, who've been doing it a long time, have made it our thing, and ask them with sincerity, hey, what's the best way to go about this? How do I prepare my mind? How do I prepare the setting that I'm doing it in? What kinds of things should I expect through the duration of the experience, and also afterward, the next day and the next week? If you ask those questions and you pay attention, you're going to avoid most of what people would consider a bad trip. And that's usually what we might call like the dumb mistakes. You don't just randomly take a psychedelic at a party after you've been drinking around a bunch of people that you half know and half don't know. That's just setting yourself up for a socially awkward, anxious experience. You got to kind of really set yourself up for success. So that's what we do with Sacred Medicine Journeys thing that we're doing, is that we have organized a systematic way of going through it that keeps you set up for having a positive growth experience.
Great.
So that helps you avoid it. And some of it's psychological too. So how do you think about, what words do you use to describe this? The language you're using to describe things shapes your thoughts, and it holds feelings in place. Language is very powerful. So we do ritual and ceremony and all sorts of things that help to concentrate the mind and focus the intent. So that's a way of avoiding quote unquote bad trips. But the other part of it is learning how to accept the discomforts as grist for the mill, things that help you to process and grow. So you can think of turning it into a growth experience. How do you convert negative feelings and negative visions and things into something that could teach you? Make it your friend.
Yeah, for sure. as you were describing all this, and I thought you painted a great picture. But both of you painted a really good picture on this topic, because I think this is something that people would be scared about.
Yeah,
and it
understandably
helps to hear some of this stuff, and somebody could easily want to go experience nature and go get lost in the wilderness. So you get a guide.
Yeah.
You get somebody who knows the terrain, understands what plants are dangerous and what animals to be careful about, and it sounds like that's what you're doing. You're allowing people to experience this amazing, powerful, transformative thing, right? That would be hard to do on your own.
Yep.
And so you find somebody who knows the land.
Yeah, and both of us do personal coaching and things like that, and we both know that sometimes people will say, I haven't been ready to enter into this topic, and I'm a little scared to enter into this topic with you. I'm not talking about psychedelics. I'm just talking about regular coaching. You've had that experience.
Yes.
I've had that experience.
Sure.
And you can tell that they've been holding off for a long time because they're afraid of what might come up. And they know, or they suspect, that by talking about it, it's going to bring up a lot of heaviness or fear. And then they do. They cry, they shake, they tremble. They go through all sorts of quote unquote bad trips in the office there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
So again, is that a bad trip, or is that them choosing to work it out, choosing to clean out that those psychic toxins, if you will? Like, if they're making that choice consciously, as you should with any psychedelic trip, make that choice consciously, then it gets better quicker, because you're moving through the discomfort by getting into it and not avoiding it. And you find that silver lining, you find the light at the end of the tunnel. You can unravel the knot that's inside of you psychically.
Yeah.
That's what's so powerful about it.
Okay. So, sacred medicine journeys. Are these retreats for everyone?
No.
They're not.
No.
They're not. I'm glad we got that up. So
Yeah, there's an application process that includes an interview, because as much as we love sacred medicine, it isn't for everyone. There are people with certain health conditions where this might not be appropriate. People with schizophrenia or dissociative disorders may not want to go this route because it can make it worse. People with an immediate family history of schizophrenia, it's not necessarily a no-go, but they do need to be aware that there is a risk, especially if they're a little bit younger, like in their 30s, there is a risk that it could trigger their first schizophrenic episode. It's not that the psychedelic created schizophrenia. They were likely going to develop it anyway. It just brought it on earlier. So people need to be aware of that. Also, people with certain cardiac concerns would really need to consult their doctor first before doing this. Same with hypertension, that sort of thing. People who are on SSRIs, so antidepressants, the most widely prescribed antidepressants. Medicine work is contraindicated. It used to be that they believed it would cause something called serotonin syndrome, which is an overload of serotonin in the system, which can be lethal. Now the science is saying that that is likely not true. However, if someone's on SSRIs, it will significantly lessen the effect of the psychedelic. It may actually cause them to not trip at all. So we're not going to recommend anybody come off of their SSRIs. This might not be the time for them to explore psychedelics. There are also people who we just get a feel that either we're personally not the right match for what they're looking for. They might benefit more from a clinical, more medical setting, or our spidey senses, our coaching senses are tingling, and there's just something that feels off where you can't put your finger on it, but psychedelics are probably not the path the person should be on right now.
Sure.
Yeah, the three of us understand that you really do need to trust your clinical intuition, because it's based on something, even if you can't articulate it right away.
Yeah.
We're pretty good at listening to that. It's very important in the work we do to listen to that often. And so if we get that signal, then no. I mean, I can't think of a more uncomfortable experience than allowing someone to come in who wasn't really right for the work, and then there you are with medicine, and you've got, by the way, not just us, but other people who, they've chosen to engage in this experience with trust and vulnerability.
Yeah.
And then if you have one person who is really just a mismatch for the psychological energy of the group, then that could be disturbing to them, and we wouldn't want that. So our interview process and the question, it's very important that we have a good sense of rapport and connection, and a clear understanding of maybe some of their goals, and dispel some of the misconceptions like you said earlier. That's very important. So it isn't for everyone. We're not claiming it's a panacea at all. We're just saying this is a very powerful tool, that it's been underutilized because of the prohibition on it. And we want to kind of stand up for the truth that we believe, which is that this is a valuable thing, and we want to be those people standing in that truth, and helping people to experience it who want to have that experience.
All right. Yeah. Well, it's good to hear that it's not for everyone, because any respectable practice of any kind would say the same thing. Not everybody's a candidate for a surgery. Not everybody's a candidate for a particular medication. There's inclusion factors and exclusion factors, and that's I think part of the benefit of doing this with guides. Because you can get that wisdom, from that. Do people need prior experience to come do this?
No, they don't need any prior experience. If they do, that's great. I mean, we love that too. They're going to have a different experience with us than when they did it by themselves or with their friends. But you could be a complete newbie, never having taken a psychedelic. You're 65 years old and you want to just do it because it's something important. You want to take that next step inside of yourself to see what insights you could gain. It could be just like that. And after we've had an interview and we've gotten some clarity about what's necessary and required for it, if everything looks good, it's a green light, you go. So it doesn't matter whether someone's had experience or not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how would somebody prepare for a journey?
That's a great question. One of the kind of really important aspects of this work is about becoming comfortable with the multiple layers that is you. So we recommend that people begin a meditation practice if they don't have one already, particularly something like a breath practice, like Anapana or any of the yogic breathing. And the reason for that is you're not being distracted by a guided visualization. You're not doing a lot of things. You're only watching your breath and becoming aware of all of the things that float up in the mind as a result. This teaches really a foundational skill for a sacred medicine journey of being able to sit with whatever comes up in a way that is calm and okay and accepting, even if it is unpleasant. So that is number one. Number two is really considering what your intention is. It is absolutely fine to have an intention of coming into this work just because you're curious. Great. Also, people may have specific things that they would like to work through, so becoming clear on what those things are, and not just what you don't want, but how do you want to be on the other side of this? Who do you want to become? And the cool thing is, when you consider who you want to become, when you come out on the other side of the retreat, you're going to go way past whatever that starting image was. So it's more like just planting your flag in the sand. Carlos, do you have more?
Absolutely. There are also a couple of things I think that can help soothe the curious and agitated mind is researching a little bit on sites like MAPS, where there's an emphasis on the benefits, and yet there's some science behind it. I think people who are a little nervous about it, if they do some initial research into those things, it'll help soothe that part of the conscious mind that's kind of freaking a little bit, and allow them to say, okay, this is something that you can do, and and it can be beneficial. And they start to read other people's positive experiences, and it just helps to set them up for success that way. There are a couple of really great documentaries out there. I mean, she mentioned How to Change Your Mind earlier, Michael Pollan, and you know, if you're not if you don't have a discipline like reading, then watch the Netflix documentary. It's based on the same thing. It's 4 or 5 segments, and it kind of summarizes the book more or less.
Okay.
And so that can be a good way to prepare yourself. Basically, if you search out these positive experiences, Vice has some documentaries on it. Just look around and you'll see that can sometimes be a good preparation. Also, you know, if you know anybody, like she mentioned the breath practice, that's absolutely great. If you have been engaging in a regular physical practice that's disciplined, like yoga or martial arts or anything like that, even regular walks, that kind of thing, and you just start to speak to yourself, what do I want to get out of this experience? What do I if I were to work on myself, what would be something that I would really want to change? And when you enter into the experience, we're going to be having questionnaires and interviews and preparatory practices, so they won't have to worry about that. We will give them guidance in that. But these are just some general things that are helpful.
Yeah.
Watch what, start being mindful of what you're taking into your body,
Yeah.
how you're treating yourself.
Yeah.
Because this is all about you.
So, sacredmedicinejourneys.com.
Yeah.
Right? How is Sacred Medicine Journeys, how does it differ from other like mind-altering, mind-expanding types of practices that are out there?
Right. So I have experience, and so does Carlos, in a lot of different techniques, things like holotropic breath work, obviously hypnosis, various meditation practices and martial arts. All of these things are wonderful, and they do expand consciousness. And there is absolutely nothing else that compares to a sacred medicine journey. All of those other practices are wonderful and have tremendous benefit, but they are not the same. In my point of view, there's no comparison. And I'm really passionate about meditation and hypnosis. I see these practices change lives. So it's not to discount them. And I might have been tempted years ago to think that they would be kind of on the same level as psychedelics. No, not anywhere close. This is deeper. This is more profound. This invites you to pull back the layers of self and see and experience what's happening underneath the surface and who and what is at your core. And it does it in such a profound and lasting way. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, I have a spiritual relationship with the mushrooms. My personal view, and nobody else has to agree, that's fine, but my personal view is they do have a consciousness, they do have a spirit. Mm-hmm. He talks to me every journey, and it's wonderful. I don't have that relationship with hypnosis at all. For me, that is a technique, a technology, a strategy. It is very contextualized to one specific change that a client asks for, like quitting smoking or, stop nail biting, that type of thing. Sacred medicine is so expansive, it touches every aspect of my life.
Yeah. What she said. Yeah. I have to say that in my own experience, psychedelics are a living part of my existence. I feel that I'm receiving nuanced sensations and thoughts and feelings, and it influences and shapes the way I engage with the world outside of having taken it. So it does change you, and I don't want that to frighten anyone, but I think everyone ought to have a little bit of awe for it. And awe contains just a tiny bit of fear. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is an awesome experience. It can flabbergast you, and it's profound. So, or potentially very profound. So it differs, but it could incorporate some of the other modalities. If you are a strong meditator, or if you have some area of expertise, when you take psychedelics with this kind of intentionality behind it, it is going to be a part of your experience. Therefore, on the one hand, you could say, oh, wow, I'm realizing all these things about this area of discipline that I'm invested in life. And could I have realized this without the psychedelics? That's a tough question to answer. It's Schrodinger's cat, right? I don't know. I mean, it seems like once you've taken these psychedelic substances in that context and you start making realizations or have epiphanies in your area of expertise, whatever that may be, wow, I could have gotten there, but you didn't, or I didn't in that case. So I think it's very important because psychedelics do open those doors. They keep the door open longer. You're in that state longer. I think it just makes whatever you're innately capable of doing, I think that the range expands. Your capacities open up. So it is you. It's not the drugs. Okay? I don't want to give that impression. It's the drugs that did it. It's not. But those substances, those medicines, those psychotropic chemicals in your body help you to maintain a focus for a longer period of time. It keeps that door open longer, and it gives you a very powerful glimpse of what's possible were you to substantially change your approach to life. So should you do them every day? No. It's not even possible to do them every day without reducing your sensitivity to them. That's the interesting thing about most psychedelics is you do it, the very next day you would need more in order to get to the same level. And that continues until your brain goes, sorry, you're going to have to wait a little bit.
Yeah.
So why is that? Well, I don't know why, but I can tell you what meaning I get out of it is that we're not supposed to be using them constantly. They're there as really powerful reminders. They're like that tool that will help us get to the other side. It's a bridge. You know, once you cross that bridge, you don't need that same bridge. You might need a new bridge. And so they helps you to build, but you have to still do the heavy lifting. You still have to work. You still have to change yourself. So there's some things in common with medicine work and other kinds of modalities. And there's no reason why you can't use those modalities while you're utilizing psychedelics to help the psychedelics have a unique kind of angle or a unique frame. And so it's very harmonious, but it's definitely not the same.
Okay.
You know,
okay.
People have tried to say that a lot, and I've heard it for many years. It's not the same, though. Yet, there are some areas where they cross over.
Yeah. So these journeys, is this generally a one-time thing that somebody does, or is this something that needs to be or should be an ongoing kind of practice?
It can be a one-time deal, but obviously for her and I, this is a path, and it's not a one-time thing. And we would hope in our heart of hearts that people would embrace the path and really get the most out of it. And the best way to get the most out of something is to continually dive into it with a renewed enthusiasm each time. How, were there walls that I got blocked last time? Can I melt or overcome those obstacles and go deeper? Are there areas where I shied away and maybe didn't step into my courage enough that maybe this next time I can really be determined and be a little more courageous next time? It's an ongoing thing, and you get better and better at it, like any skill. Psychedelic navigation is a skill. So we would prefer it not to be a one-time thing. We would prefer people to feel like they can jump in and keep going.
And if I can add to this, because it is a skill, this is one of the reasons that we recommend that people who are interested in psychedelics but haven't done them before to not do it alone. For the first time, absolutely not. It's really important to have someone with you who knows the territory. I shared with Carlos that not too long ago, I had a solo experience. This was my first solo experience. I said to him, I cannot imagine, this was after, anyone doing this for the first time alone.
Sure.
Because all of the skills that I had learned up to that point made it possible for that experience, which was a really profound and big experience, I was able to navigate it in a way that was safe for me.
Okay. Great. Now, there are some people that might be of the opinion that these things should not be practiced outside of their, indigenous, culture of origin, or maybe the other side where people say this really should not be done outside of a medical context.
Right.
They're very opposite ideas. Maybe you could say something about those things.
Sure. So anyone who says that it shouldn't be done outside of an indigenous context does not have the perspective of history. There is no continent that has had humans on it that hasn't had a psychedelic tradition. In Europe, we have psilocybin mushrooms. We had the kaikian, which had ergot in it. Also, Amanita muscaria is traditional in the Sami people in Nordic countries. So there is this tradition around the world. There is no one claim to it. Additionally, if you look to indigenous cultures, who have protected the tradition through the colonial era and through the Inquisition era, those cultures are more than welcoming to share their traditions. I recently completed a training in the Mazatec rituals. The Mazatec people were the people who preserved the tradition of psilocybin mushrooms in Mexico. And I worked with a curandera, and she was really warm and welcoming to everyone of every culture and was encouraging us to really just take parts of her ritual, her tradition that fit with what we do, that we get the most benefit from. So indigenous, curanderas and shaman are saying, hey, yes, come learn from the medicine. I don't think it's really fair for an outsider to say, hey, no, it can only be those people, because the reality is just the fact that we live on Earth, we are entitled to have access to these medicines, which also speaks to the medicalization side. Because we are children of this earth, we have a claim to these medicines, not doctors. There are certain populations who would really benefit from a medical approach. Absolutely. There are people with certain diagnoses that they really should be working with a doctor and not with us. And that's totally fine.
And for research.
Yes, and for research, 100%.
Learning about the brain, things like that.
Yeah, right.
And it's really great that they're doing this work, because we know so much more about specifically the classic tryptamines than we knew in the 1960s. So it's incredibly valuable and important work. But Johns Hopkins, Imperial College, NYU, UC Berkeley, none of these guys own the rights to sacred medicine. They just don't.
Yeah, on a legal level, it could be that legislation is swayed that direction, which would be a shame.
Yeah.
It would mean that people who are indigenous would not have a legal right to do it.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Because it has to be under the supervision of a doctor. And there are some people who feel very safe in that idea that, well, it's doctors who should be doing it because this should be safe and it's a medicine. And that's one way to look at it. But I would just invite people to remember that, we've got, probably 1 million years of using psychedelics. And the best way to learn how to navigate that experience is to dive in and learn how to navigate with someone who can guide you. It's not to have necessarily a doctor and supervising you and a nurse coming in every hour to check on your blood pressure and giving you the sense that you're in a doctor's office, right? That's a strange set of experiences that people will have a real mix of discomforts and strange feelings around because it's medical, right? most people don't feel overjoyed to go to the doctor. But yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, could trigger negative feelings and associations.
Absolutely. There are some places where they make an effort to make it nicer.
Yeah.
But
I would point out too that if you see video of those situations where it is kind of more of a medicalized thing, what do? They bring in soft lighting and candles, and they start taking efforts to recreate
some
a
green
different,
plants.
a different environment. Why do they do that? Because it seems like they understand that there's another way to do this, and maybe this medical way of doing it is not necessarily the most conducive to getting what you're trying to get.
Right. And the idea that some indigenous movements are creating is that they should be the only ones with access to that. And with respect to those people and their traditions and their individual plight, the situation where they've been treated unfairly and cruelly, in many respects, disrespected. So what I'm about to say is not meant in disrespect of that. Absolutely, you know me and where I come from in that. Their cause and their values are important to me. But there's this movement called, was it legalized plants?
Decriminalized nature.
Decriminalized nature.
Yeah, decriminalize nature. Right.
And it was an initiative to say that, hey, substances, mind-altering substances or not, should not be criminalized. It's just wrong. And so there's a movement to get local, state, and cities and counties to decriminalize these substances. And it's been partly effective. We've had many states and cities changing things like that. But then there was an additional set of initiatives that were focused in on the peyote as being an exclusion.
Peyote, the cactus.
The cactus
the
that
cactus.
contains mescaline. It's one of the varieties that contains mescaline. And they were very adamant about that. And I've heard the arguments for it, and I have to say I don't agree, because their argument was that this is sacred territory, no one else should be able to have it, because this is within our tradition, and in any case, it's a plant, a cactus that is endangered, and we don't want that to become extinct. And I can just say that how is that any different than huachuma, the San Pedro cactus? Both cacti grow in the same areas, essentially, more or less. And you can cultivate both of them. If you want to preserve something and keep it from going extinct, then preventing people from using it is not the way. Getting people to cultivate it is the way. So you produce more. And if you don't pass laws that prevent people from doing that, then you're going to get people cultivating peyote. You're going to get people cultivating these things because it's going to assure that there's a future supply of it. And it makes it more likely that it will stay. And the idea that only one plant, like a cactus, like peyote, is only allowable with a certain people is antithetical to the idea of medicine work in general. These medicines have been universal everywhere. Why would that matter what color your skin is or how you were raised? If you were genuine and sincere about wanting to experience these things, why would that be sacrilegious?
Sure.
So anyway, I don't agree, and I'm just kind of stating that for the record.
Yeah.
I know there are other people that are against that idea, but that's why I don't agree with that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we can assure the safety of those indigenous practices and the continuation of those plants by just having more people do it and respecting the rules around it. You know?
It seems, to kind of echo what you're saying, makes a lot more logical sense to me to say protect and expand.
Yeah.
Not protect and minimize.
Right.
that to expand could very well be the protection that's required. Thanks for speaking up on that.
Absolutely.
And sharing that idea. I think it's important. I think we've kind of already talked about this a little bit, but let's just kind of make it clear. What qualifies each of you to do this?
Well, first would be our combined years of coaching experience. We are not new to the territory of helping people navigate the realm of the unconscious, the superconscious, the soul. We have ample experience. We have ample experience as well in the realm of sacred medicine, so that it, really helps. We know the territory well. And I think on kind of another level, this is our life path. We live this. This is where our hearts are for the medicine and for the healing that it brings.
Yeah, 100%. And the commitment that we have as healers who are all in means that no matter what comes up for the person, we're there. We don't abandon people in their time of need. I could ask the same question, like, what qualifies me to be a healer and to do deep emotional work with people? What qualifies me to do it? It's to do with congruence and integrity. The decision that we made a long time ago and that we continue to make in new ways all the time, to recommit ourselves to the work. It's a consistent thing that cycles through in our consciousness, which is we're committed to this no matter what. So what qualifies us, I think, also is like therapeutic use of self. We're here to witness and also facilitate this experience with you, no matter whether you're soaring heaven or fathoming the depths of hell. We're there with you. And that kind of commitment is a trust, and it's a bond that is more important than any kind of label or set of letters after our name or anything like that. We feel that as way more important. So it's our own, you could say, personal, philosophical, and spiritual journey that has given us the, I guess, if you want to put it this way, the authority to initiate a practice with this and to carve out a space and time to facilitate others in it.
Okay. What makes for a good retreat? What makes for a good experience like this? Yeah, maybe you could kind of share some insights as to what it is that makes what you do outstanding. How could people look at something and evaluate it and know what's good, what's quality?
Well, there are a number of retreats out there. Some of which are using sacred medicines of various kinds. So when I hear that question, I think, what should a person be looking for?
Yeah.
I think number one, if you're just searching online, is you want to look at are there who are these people that are going to be giving you the medicine, and when you read through their profiles and when you get in contact with them, what's that quality like? The quality of that interaction. Do you feel that they're unprofessional? Do you feel that they're meeting you? They're speaking to you as human to human from their heart, with respect and authority. That's important because the guides are probably the most important part. Who you're choosing to engage with and create a therapeutic relationship with. That's super important. Just like if you're hiring a coach, or seeking spiritual advice, it's the same thing. And then how they produce the overall experience. Like, do they have some kind of a structure that is a repeatable structure that is well thought out and strategically aligned so that that people can go through their catharsis and through their journey in a way that helps them to retain really important kernels that they take with them? Do they have a process that facilitates that after the experience? And then also, have they put a lot of thought into the various settings, physical environments where you're going to be doing that? I know with Jess and I, we spend a good amount of time researching locations, depending on how many people are coming and whether we're doing a really upscale VIP version or we're doing more the kind of everyday person version. There's different levels that go into it. So what I'm essentially saying is set and setting, right? And the facilitators themselves.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah,
or-
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Why do you refer to it as sacred medicine?
Because it is. For me, I can't think of a more sacred experience than connecting with my own soul in a space and a container that is loving and supportive. Sacred medicine can be one of the most divine experiences we have as humans. In fact, people continuously rank it, peak experience, one of the top 3 peak experiences in life. It's ranked up there with near-death experiences and the birth of children. This is incredibly sacred. And these substances, like I said, I believe they have a consciousness to them. This isn't just taking a drug. This is connecting with something that allows us to connect more deeply with ourselves.
Yeah.
I notice you use the term sacred medicine, not sacred medication. And I just noticed that.
Yeah.
And there's something about that, I think. It's sacred medicine. So, Carlos, how about you? Sacred medicine.
Yeah. First of all, we've all heard the term medicine woman, medicine man. I think we've been exposed to that phrase from probably TV and movies and things like that. Indigenous folks using that phrase, and it implies that there is a spiritual and philosophical depth to whatever it is that is, quote unquote, the medicine. So when you talk about what is sacred, sacred to you is holy. It's separate and it's apart from everything else, but also something that you could carry into everything else if you were to care about it. When I think of sacred medicine, it also brings to mind the sacred self. What is it inside of us that is most sacred to us, most the highest and deepest within us? When you use sacred medicines and when you engage on a sacred medicine journey or on the sacred medicine path, you're choosing to engage as deeply as you know how, with the intent of perhaps getting even deeper at some point. It's like setting things into motion that begin to have a life of its own, which is not to say that you're putting the power outside of yourself necessarily. It's just saying that when you make the choice to enter into sacred medicines the way we're approaching it, why it's sacred is that it goes beyond the ingestion of those substances and it starts to get into something that is phenomenological. Your relationship with everyday events and things can change if you engage like this. You can start to see synchronicities and the hidden web of connection between things in a way that nothing else quite does. So it's a sacred medicine because it allows you to see the sacredness within all of the things in your life, your relationships with yourself and others and the planet. That's what makes it sacred to me. Yeah.
Okay. So there are people that want to do this. There are people that need to do this. People that have to do this. maybe you could say a little something about kind of the mechanics of it. What are the lengths of these retreats? I imagine this is something you'd be doing a handful of times a year. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So the retreats, depending on which medicines we're engaging with, 6 to 8 days, and also depending on location. We will be engaging with these medicines in locations that the legal status is friendly, because it's really important that everyone feel safe and comfortable going into this. So places like Peru, where we can openly engage with San Pedro, with Huachuma, places like that. So 6 to 8 days, and the journeys are on alternating days. So there'll be a welcoming day, a journey day, an integration day, a journey day, an integration day, a journey day, integration, and a closing ceremony. And then goodbye until next time.
Okay, all right. So people are looking at a week or more.
Yes.
For
Yeah,
this.
and we did say this earlier, but just to reiterate, there's follow up. It's important to us that people don't feel like they're just sort of left to their own devices without any kind of connection to us. I mean, that is partly what makes us different, is that we're very committed to the ongoing practices. So there will be things that we, suggested practices to help deepen, and will be available to our clients, because we want to let them know that we really are different in this way, that we want them to feel safe and comfortable. And, after sharing an experience like that, you can't help but feeling some love for the people that are there, and a deeper connection and more trust and stuff. So it'll be easier for people to be able to share their roses and thorns in their life afterward. And I look forward to that personally, just kind of cultivating that through the years, and knowing that what we helped to facilitate created a whole river of awesomeness after that experience for those people.
And I know I'm working backwards, but additionally, we also have preparation sessions, because we work with small groups, and this is a sacred and very intimate experience. It's important for the attendees to get to know each other before, so going in, so they'll have an opportunity to meet the other participants. And also the preparation sessions allow us to address any concerns, any questions, as well as offering meditation instruction and some of the other preparation activities that we highly recommend, so people feel grounded and thoroughly prepared going into the experience.
Yeah, people's capacity for witnessing and describing their own experiences, and for evaluating their personality and their traits differ wildly. I've heard it said, humans are horrible witnesses to their own experiences, and it's generally very true. Because there's so much in the way of actually being able to witness yourself. You've got a lot of layers to look through. So if we do have a moment of clarity from time to time, it's really wonderful, and it makes a big difference. I think, you asked a question earlier about how this has changed us. And, one of the ways that it's changed me is it's improved my ability to see myself, and it's made me more mentally and emotionally flexible. I'm more capable of even maintaining ambivalences, to not have to know, and to have several possibilities being okay. So less black and white in my thinking, and more capable of noticing the gray areas, more willing and capable of enjoying shadow work, right? Working on being able to see how I am projecting my my challenges, my difficulties, my pain, where that's getting projected out into the world and onto other people or in my life. So I'm having more fun being able to actually see that rather than it being a begrudged kind of experience or something that I would avoid. The medicine work has taught me that it's actually okay. I can engage with that, not only during the session, but it can shift my willingness so that I want to do this even when I'm not ingesting substances, but I will take it out into my life. That's transformed me quite a lot, and it's made me more capable of feeling compassion for the human race and all of its differences and all of the negativity. To be able to see that and understand that a lot of that lives inside of me, it makes me more capable of allowing and understanding that that's okay, yet still capable also of speaking up when necessary. I could go down a long list of things that's helped, but these are like some of the main things. It's improved my cognition. I grew up being told that I had learning disabilities, and yet I also was in GATE, gifted and talented education. So it's like, okay, I've got learning disabilities over here, but I'm recommended for GATE and I'm in GATE. What does that actually mean? So psychedelics have allowed me to see where my limitations are and also how to expand them. So we kind of hope that everyone who comes to the retreats will discover things about themselves. They'll have improved capacity to witness themselves, the journaling and the questions that they've never been asked before. We're hoping that this improves their day-to-day baseline of how they observe themselves through those filters, just like it did for us and has continued to do for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think people can thank their lucky stars that the two of you have decided to do this and that you're doing this now, really. I know, because I know you both. I mean, Carlos, we go way, way, way back. And I know that this has transformative power in it. And I applaud you both for doing this and taking this step and offering this to other people.
Thank you.
So I'm excited for you. Very proud of you both for doing this. This is a very significant thing to offer the world. So I'm thanking you for doing it.
Thanks.
And
Thanks.
so sacredmedicinejourneys.com.
Yes, and if a person comes to our website and just fills out their personal information, like an email and a name, contact stuff, not only will they get an email that has a link to a downloadable lecture that we gave at HypnoThought's live convention this last year, which is pretty informative. Okay. But there's also a couple of interviews and things like that. And just to be clear, we're not spammers.
No.
Okay.
So there's no one that needs to worry about that. Your information, we will, when we offer a new retreat, we will send an email out letting people know that that's happening and how to contact us for that and how to apply for that. And that's it. So people who join the site can be free of any fears of spamming. We will only put out a direct information about our website or about our upcoming retreats, and that's it.
Beautiful. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
You've been listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts, Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. And very special thanks to our guest, Jess Marion. My name is Oliver Althoen. I produced the show. I also wrote our theme song, which you're listening to right now. Please remember to subscribe to The Authenticity Show wherever you get your podcasts. Find us on social media. And you can find our website at authenticityshow.com. Thanks for listening and have an authentic day.